Let's see. Ha, did it work?
Yes.
Ha, I can hear you.
Wonderful.
Ah, you're all updated. You're up to date.
That was just totally irritating.
Yeah, I get caught in that loop of updates and won't let you do anything.
Well, and I just updated it. The last time we talked, I updated it, and you know, whatever.
Well, yeah, this is the update to fix what they broke in the last update.
Right. As you said, I think a couple of months ago, if they weren't programming, they wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah.
You know, they have to just constantly mess around with things. You can't leave it alone.
Yeah, there's a fine line. I've been doing a little bit of work with Jeannie on a project and sort of thinking about how designers and fabrics work together and all. And you know, there's really kind of a fine line between making it better and making it different. And so it's really easy to fall into that just making it different mode where you're just making changes.
Let's just move something around.
Yeah. It's
Hey, did you ever talk to the folks at Vectric about why they have two scissor icons in VCarve?
They never noticed. I brought it up in a meeting. There's two scissors there. And we only have one scissors, and Windows has the other scissors.
Come on, man. There's two scissors for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that was news. But yeah, that was a really interesting conversation. I said, what is wrong with Stuart? Just use the scissors.
Right. Which scissors? What scissors am I supposed to use? These scissors, those scissors?
That's all you need. Just use the scissors.
And you guys have been using it for years, and you're like, there's only one pair of scissors, and I'm looking at the screen going, no, there's two scissors here.
You disappeared there for a
Listen,
second.
I've got some questions from one of our friends and viewers.
Okay. We've got them.
So I'm gonna read them out to you.
Uh-oh.
See if we can answer some questions for Ernest.
Okay.
First question is, what are your go-to end mills? Which I know you and I've talked about 100 times, but I thought it'd be a great opportunity for you to just go over what your basic set is. Mine probably now includes even less than yours.
Well, that's sort of an improvement, I think. I think less is better in a lot of things. So it depends on what you're cutting. I cut a lot of plywood, and I tell you, I use a tooth flute straight for just about everything. Just because, you know, it gives a decent finish top and bottom. You can cut through, you don't have to worry. Lots of times I'm putting, my file may cut all the way through, but also do some little shallow dimples to mark for screws or whatever.
Right.
And, you know, if you use a combination, the compression bit, it'll tear the surface up something terrible if you only go like a 1/16 of an inch deep because you're on that little up spiral part. Down spirals work to hold the material down, but they're fire starters. You know, the chips have no place to go. Just about every time you hear about somebody having a spoil board fire, it turns out that they were using a down spiral bit. I
have absolutely no use for a down spiral.
Yeah, people like them because they hold the material down. They're pushing down constantly. But you know, the price you pay is the chips don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I do use a down spiral on occasion. I'm using a down spiral for these little ear savers, but it's only 20 thou thick plastic. And I really do need the hold down because it's so thin and so floppy.
You're using vacuum, a pressure foot, a down spiral, everything you can do to keep it down.
Because the vacuum doesn't really do a great job on stuff that's really thin because it's so flexible. You know, it holds it in place, and it does kind of keep it from doing this kind of scooching, which is really sort of an issue, but it doesn't hold it down very well. And I need all three. I've tried eliminating, one of the three a couple of times. Will just the pressure foot work? Will just the vacuum work? And
It doesn't.
it didn't. No, I just need all three to be able to get, any kind of efficiency. I'm getting a little better than 500 of them out of each sheet of plastic. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's worked. It's worked well. Why mess with it?
Right.
So I generally cut with a 2-flute end mill. I mean, I'm used to them. They're easily available. Plastics, I use O-flutes. Wish I could show you the cut. Hold on for 1 second. Sing a song or do a little dance or something. I just cut some. There's no way in the world this thing's going to focus on this edge. This is a piece of HDPE.
Right.
It's just a gorgeous cut. It was cut with a O-flute, a single O-flute.
That was like the old Vaseline, across the lens trick that they did in the 20s to make people's skin look soft.
Yeah.
That's what you just did. It's like, whoosh.
Yeah.
Look at this magical cut.
It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous finish.
Yeah.
There's also a bit that almost looks like the edge is serrated. It's a kind of a series of scallops.
Yeah, I know that.
For plastic, and that works really, really well. And you can get a great fit. Plastic's different. It's definitely different than, if you're cutting something. I just cut some Celtex and expanded PVC, and you can cut that with anything. It's soft. The chips stay in it like the old Ivory Flakes laundry detergent. Yep. They just pack it. You don't have to do hardly anything to it. It's not going to move. You don't have to use tags.
I don't think most people know what that is.
Yeah, I know. I'm dating myself here.
I'm dating myself in knowing what that is.
But at least there's little chips in there that keeps from having to do all that. So I cut almost everything with just, most things with just a 1/2-inch 2-flute. They're cheap. They're available. We get them in a bunch of different cut lengths. I try to get the shortest cut length I can that'll cut through the material. They last real well. And then if I'm cutting something weird like HDPE or something like that, I try to find a bit that does a good job.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab a bit. Hang on.
Okay.
So I've been using these. See if I can get this to focus for you.
Nothing.
Let me get out of the way.
Yeah, I can
see if it'll.
Say something.
Well,
there you go. You got to get the focus back to you.
It just won't focus. God.
Yeah. Yeah.
So irritating.
We certainly don't have. We can do.
There you go.
Yep.
You see that now?
Uh-huh.
That's a 3/8-inch Italian-made compression bit that I get from one of my vendors that I've been using these for years. What I like about this bit is that it has a really shallow up spiral at the bottom. So the length of it is just under 3/16.
Mm-hmm.
And so for most of the kinds of things that I cut, I'm cutting at least that deep or deeper, right? And what I've found is that in hardwoods, this doesn't tear out the surface really at all, even if I'm making a real shallow pass.
Hardwood's a whole different animal for sure than plywood and stuff. Usually the wood's a lot softer in plywood. You're working with, one of the farmed pines or birch or something like that, and they're soft and splintery and.
Yep. Well, I use these bits. They're kind of expensive. I mean, they're about $30-something a piece, but they last a long time. I mean, a long time. All those cabinets that I've made since February were cut with 2 bits.
Oh, you amortize that over the job, and that's nothing.
No, it's it really, I mean, the bits pay for themselves. So even though they're expensive, you know, they're well made. They stay sharp. They're not burning anything. And I'm cutting, you know, like melamine, which is just
Oh
junk
gosh, yeah.
material. You know, it's good quality when it's cut and finished, but as far as what's inside of it, it's just particle board. And it's, you know, it's coarse and it's got all kinds of flaws and stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the melamine surface itself, that plastic, is hard, nasty stuff. So, I mean, it's hard on bits, but these just plow through it. I use the same bit to turn around and cut, you know, pockets and joints and stuff in hardwoods, and the bit just works fine. What I like about it, most of the compression bits that I've seen have a much deeper up spiral portion.
Right.
And so when I started looking at these, I was trying to find the one with the least amount of up spiral. And this one's got, you know, it sort of rounds over just shy of 3/16 of an inch. I'm sure it's a metric,
Mm-hmm.
you know, depth of cut, but it doesn't matter to me, so I don't need to know.
Right. Yeah.
Right, but then the rest of it is a down spiral. But one of the other things that I like about these bits is that they clear the material. Even the down spiral clears the material really well because of that little up spiral
Okay.
portion. So it doesn't pack in the hole like some other compression bits that I've used tend to do. You know what I'm talking about,
Right.
where they come down and it's, as they track, the material just packs in behind it
Yeah, there's no place for the
because
heat to go.
of that up and down cut at the same time.
Yeah.
And then you've got other problems, you know.
Yeah.
So these really pull it out. I'm running the Harvey gyro air on the ShopBot. I just have the dedicated dust collector on it.
Okay.
It's doing a beautiful job. It's quiet. The loudest thing is the router.
Let's see.
So anyway, I'm using these two, just a 1/4 inch and a 3/8. You know, you kept steering me towards the 3/8 as being the sweet spot, man.
I think it is.
I tell you, so I bought a 1/2 inch just because I had to know, Bill.
Uh-huh.
And it's too hard on the machine. Even with this big heavy duty spindle that I run, you can actually feel the vibration off the machine.
I think it's unnecessary. I think the 3/8, if you can get by with a 3/8, you know, like the shelter stuff has a lot of 1/4 inch holes. So
Right.
it's more efficient for me to use a 1/4 inch bit for everything than to do a bit change for every sheet.
Right.
But
Right.
given my druthers, I think the 3/8
Because you love bit changes
it's
so
stiff
much.
enough, but it doesn't have too big a curve. I think it's
Right.
the sweet spot. I really do.
Well, and you lose some material with these because, you know,
Mhm.
for every 2 passes, it's 3/4 of an inch.
Yeah.
You know, at the same time, you sort of ask yourself, from an efficiency standpoint, is that loss of material worth the trade-off?
Right.
And if you're cutting sheet goods, most sheet goods are engineered. I was reading a little bit on sheet goods just the other day. Most sheet goods are engineered for manufacturing with 3/8 inch bits. I didn't realize that. I've been doing this for years and didn't know that. But that's why, like, melamine comes in the 5x10 sheets, but they're always an inch over in either direction. And that compensates for the loss of the material. And if you look at the yield when you're building cabinets, if you look at the yield, it allows you to make, and I can't remember the number of cuts, but it's like it allows you to make so many cuts per sheet using a 3/8 inch bit as the standard.
Mhm. Well,
And it comes out of the sheet perfectly every time. Not only that, but when the sheet standard was started, the 5x10 is what I'm talking about.
uh-huh.
That sheet standard was started for cabinet making back in the 80s. Most people that were running CNC which weren't numerous at that point.
Right.
Most of them did not have vacuum. They were having to screw the material down to some surface. And the product of that was that extra inch it gives you the space to screw it down, and then it calculates out how many passes. I mean, I thought it was a clever system.
Yeah.
It's good because that's exactly what I found myself doing on this job, whereas in the past, I had the exact opposite. I had this big fancy vacuum system that did a beautiful job, and I didn't need anything. Now I'm sort of working with a different set of circumstances, and I mean, I got a huge yield out of that material.
Hold down is the hardest part. You can cut with just about anything. I mean, you can go to the big box store and find some bit somewhere that's like carbide brazed on a steel shank, you know, one of the cheap ones, and you can cut. But holding is the hardest part of all of it.
It is
how to, you know, and it's not. There's no sort of recipe that says this will always work in this situation.
Right.
There's mechanical fasteners. There's sticky things. You know, stick it down with double stick tape, or you know, put painter's tape on it and spray it with adhesive, or some people swear by little dots of CA glue or hot glue or clamps and all. It's it's sort of just an experience. You just gotta do it, and you gotta have enough sheets to throw across the shop to say, well, that didn't work well, or chew up enough bits running through a C clamp to say, well, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's definitely a bad idea. So anyway, my go-to kit consists of basically those two bits, the 3/8 and the 1/4. And if I, you know, as I continue to use this machine and learn more about it, I'm finding that as much of a luxury as an ATC would be, and I'd love to have one, I'm really leaning more towards the idea of just a second Z and keep a 1/4 inch bit in it, because that I can use to drill shelf pin holes, to cut any small parts, and then just keep the 3/8 inch bit all the time, just loaded all the time.
See, are you using the metric shelf pins? What size shelf pins do you use? Are you using?
Man, I use 1/4 inch, and I've used there's 2 or 3 different metric sizes.
5 millimeter or something. There's
5 millimeter, and then I think there's a 7 millimeter or something, 8 millimeter. I just use 1/4 inch for 2 reasons. One is you have a client, a shelf, and they box store, Home Depot, whatever, on, you know, online, any source. If they go place that shelf pin,
yep,
or I'm long, they're going to find 1/4 inch. They're going to find all these other, nor are they probably going to figure it out.
Yep.
So I just tell people, stick to standards that are serviceable widely, available widely. You know, it doesn't matter if you had shelves and you're putting in brass pins and you find a nickel pin, it's fine. Stick it in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's underneath the shelf. No one's going to know the difference.
Right.
So
stick a piece of 1/4 inch dowel in there, just whatever you can find all that stuff.
I've never done that, Bill. What do you think?
Of course not.
No. So anyway, well, let me see. Ernest also wanted to know.
Let me ask you one quick question about in that same topic. What's your opinion of insert bits, where you have your replaceable cutter? You see them a lot in surfacing bits. I've been using them in V bits for V carving.
Oh man, I've been thinking about getting a V.
It used to be a company called Hersaf was I think they were the pioneers, or at least that I knew first I heard of. But now Amanda's got a lot of. Hersaf used to make end mills.
CMT has them.
Do they? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I bought, that great big spoil board cutter, and I love that thing. You know, the one we had at the big shop was a couple of $100 unit, and it was nice. I started looking to replace, for this machine, started looking to find one, and I was like, I'm not spending $250 just on the body alone, and then you buy the inserts and all that. So, I found this one on Amazon for $70 or something. It's still not cheap, but it's,
sure.
By comparison, before that I was using the Whiteside solid body cutter, and it's a good quality cutter. I really like that cutter. But I've now just started to keep that on the desktop.
Well, those
So
things
it
too,
just stays with that set of bits.
if you forget that you've wrung the head off a drywall screw, it's got a little bit of that hard shaft in there. You chip that solid body white side one, and
You're done.
you know, it's a fishing sinker at that point.
Yep.
It doesn't. Yeah. So anyway, I've just started using them again. I used some of the Hersaf stuff years ago.
Yeah.
But the Mana seem to be pretty good. It's nice to hear that CMT's going that way too. It's an interesting idea. You can just keep some, you know, if you get stuck without a bit, it's really expensive. If you got to, you know, time wise, if you have to wait to something to come in for a couple of days and the thing just, your sheet sits on the machine. It's costly.
Yeah, downtime. I mean, you're done. Yeah. You're done, and none of this stuff, at least where I am, none of it's available off the shelf. You know, we're lucky. We have a really good vendor that's reasonably close to us that I've been doing business with for a while, and they're great folks. If I have to, I can drive there and back. I mean, it's a pretty serious drive, but I would be up and running that day if they have what I need in stock. And they don't stock a lot of the, you know, the specialty bits and stuff. You know, they don't have any call for dovetail, or stuff like that. So they still have to order them, and it's the same as me going on Amazon or whatever, you know, or Amana Tools Today or whatever. So, my opinion on those insert bits is I love them.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been a carbide guy for a long time. I have carbide, a spiral carbide head on my joiner, and it's half as loud as the joiner that I had before this one. The bits, I actually just rotated the whole set of bits for the first time in several years for this job. We're using a lot of maple, you know, and when you go through maple, through a pack of, you know, several hundred board feet of maple, you'll end up with boards in there that are curly.
Mm-hmm.
They're really pretty boards, but man, they are a nightmare to try to.
Right. You're going in every possible direction. You can't.
Yeah, and
you know,
if you're building a table out of curly maple and that's your goal, you know, it's just that one piece and you can take the time, then it's not that big of a deal. But if you're plowing through hundreds of board feet, it is really irritating to run into a piece of curly maple, because it just, you know, it slows everything down, and you got to patch it. You got to, you know, it's irritating. So I'm a big fan. I will eventually replace the cutter head in my planer with spiral knives, insert knives. So Ernest wanted to know if we zero to the surface or the bed, and why, and what are the benefits of both? You go first.
Here's my theory. If what you care about is what's cut away, zero at the top of the material. So if you're V cutting, if you want to cut a groove that's a 1/4 inch deep, zero at the top of the material. Then you don't have to know how thick the material is. It's just going to always be right. You can do whatever. If you care about what's left, if you want to leave a 1/4 inch tendon on a piece, zero from the table. And then it'll always be a 1/4 inch. No matter how thick the material is, you'll always leave a 1/4 inch tendon. The other advantage to zeroing at the table is you don't chew up your spool board. If you zero there and you cut, you know, everything 0.005 deep and your surface is flat, it'll always just skim cut into your spool board.
Right.
I think one of the worst things to do is to go back and forth. You know, do one of them at the table, one at the top, one at the table. I think you ought to pick one that you're happy with, and then only do the other on a special case and be really aware of it, because you can do some terrible damage to a spool board by thinking you're zeroed at the surface and actually zero at the table. Then all of a sudden you're cutting 3/4 of an inch into your table.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of, if you ever make a change, you need to do it for a reason, and be hyper aware that
That's what
it can be
that's what
planned.
Gordon and I did when we first set up this machine. The very first cut, you know, he was explaining things to me. We were going through this and that, and he fired it up, and he's like, "Okay, well, let's make this first cut." And because I was distracting him, you know, he just overlooked it. And I mean, he knows better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know better. But he fired it up, and we were going to cut out a little sign. You know, it's like, let's do this thing and make something useful out of the first cut. And I mean, the bit just was plowed in, right?
It's easy to do. I mean, as many years as
And I lived with that until I resurfaced it just a month ago.
Yeah.
You know, so I've had it like that for a year.
I mean, you could.
This huge pocket in it.
I did a video of replacing my spool board, and you can see all the battle scars in the vacuum plenum. I mean, they're all over the place, and it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's easy to do. You got 100 things you're thinking about, and so my suggestion is those are my sort of reasons. So if you care about what you're cutting away, 0 at the top. If you care about what's left, 0 at the table. Or if you want to save your spool board, 0 at the table. But be consistent. Don't flip back and forth.
That's sage advice. I'm not as concerned about the spoil board, I think, as some people are. I don't mind resurfacing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of times if I'm cutting furniture, I'm not ever getting to the spoil board anyway. So I always 0 from the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, talking about picking one, I basically always 0 from the surface. And like you said, unless it's some special, you know, some other reason that I need to 0 at the bed, I just 0. I mean, because you always know how deep you're cutting.
Yep.
And for me, most of the stuff that I'm doing is a subtractive. You know, the result is a subtractive thing. I mean, I know, you know, all CNC cutting is subtractive, but the nature of what I'm doing is cutting some sort of a pocket into something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important for me to know how deep that pocket is, so the joint fits tightly, or,
Right.
you know, things slot together correctly, that kind of thing. So it makes sense just to go for the surface almost 100% of the time. Probably 90% or better.
I in the beginning always 0'd at the table. Always.
Okay.
And because I was working on boat parts, and there was a lot of times for like doing step scarves and all that where it really mattered. You know, I didn't want to have to creating a file was not nearly as easy as it is now. So
Right.
you couldn't just go in and say, oh, this sheet of plywood's, you know, 0.49 instead of 0.47, and just generate.
I bet they had 7 scissor tools back then.
Yeah. But you couldn't. Yeah, I mean, it was just really hard to do. It wasn't just a quick open up software and boom, change a number and generate a new file and run it. So
right.
I could always, if I 0'd it, that was the only way to give me an absolute Z0 was that table. That table was consistent. The top of the material, you know, varied with thickness, but the table was always the table.
Yeah.
So, but I eventually, and I really didn't start doing it till I started doing, you know, V-carving got easy. The V-carving didn't exist in the sort of the low end software stuff for a long time, probably, you know, halfway through my CNC adventure before you could really just V-carve a sign. And then you really have to do it at the surface for that. And then I just sort of gradually, because I was doing more and more at the top, I just said, let's just always do the top.
Yep. So would you say you're in the same camp, maybe 90% of the time from the top?
I do. I almost never do 0 to the table anymore. Occasionally I'll need to do, I'll have something where I need to leave a 1/4 inch tenon.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to measure every sheet and recalculate a file. I mean, I can go through a stack of plywood and it doesn't make any difference. The 1/4 inch tenon will always be a 1/4 inch tenon, either if the plywood gets thicker or thinner.
Right. Well, for me, I'm constantly changing the material thickness. You know, it's almost every part.
Yeah.
And so I'm 0ing all the time anyway. I mean, if I was just running sheets of material, I'd probably just 0 to the bed and let it cut to whatever depth, and that way it doesn't matter what the thickness of the material is. But even when I was cutting all these cabinet parts, I just zeroed to the surface and went for it. And there were a couple of sheets, where it gets down into the table a little bit. And you're like, well,
yep.
It is what it is.
I got a buddy, Rob Bell. If you get a chance, look at Zomatic. Just search that. He builds Zomes, does a lot of Burning Man stuff and all that. He had this real clever system where he would do all of his cut files for an inch thick. And then he would use the ShopBot software to scale the file based on how thick the material really was. So he just used the proportion, the scaling right within the control software to change it. Instead of generating a new file, everything was sort of this unit thickness, this 1 unit thickness. And if the material was 0.72, he would just scale to 72% of the.
That's clever.
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really clever way to do it.
Huh.
He's a really interesting guy. He was a programmer and worked for the Lego Mindstorms people, the Lego people on the Mindstorm stuff many, many years ago.
Cool.
And decided
that's one of those jobs, like when you're a little kid, like, I want to work for those guys.
He did. And but he decided he wanted to be a woodworker. So look at Zomatic. The guy's named Rob Bell. But sometimes look at some of the stuff he builds, the sort of geometrically based structures. They're really clever. They're really appealing. It's worth getting lost on the internet for a little while to look at his stuff. But this whole sort of scaling system I thought was pretty neat. Just pick a unit value.
Check it out. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it keeps you from having to generate, because he did it at the same time I started. It was a trying to deal with creating new files wasn't easy, so you had to really sort of work it. You had to kludge around it.
Right.
You kids these days have it easy. It's really true though.
You could just insert TJ dad joke here.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, you don't know what it's like in the old days.
In the old days.
Back when all this stuff was steam powered, you had to shovel coal into it to get it going.
There's like 2 squirrels on little bicycles.
That's right. That's right. You gotta
to make your carriage go back and forth.
Yeah, you want your shelves, you better feed the squirrels. So what are you working on?
Bill, I've had a nice morning.
Good.
I'm ready for rain to stop. Really ready for the rain to stop.
Is it blowing there?
Yeah, it's been raining for 3 days straight or something. It's like nonstop.
It's been raining and blowing here. It's just
and it's not one of those rains that's hard and then soft and stops, and it's just rain, full blown rain. We're tired of it. So.
Yeah, it's pretty dreary.
Well, we talked about maybe sometime in the next month or so, maybe getting squirrely and driving up to see you.
Cool.
Thought the kids could go to the beach, and maybe you and I can talk about timber ply.
Yeah, they've just opened Cape Charles Beach back up. Just in the last week or so.
Well, is it overrun with people, or is it?
I haven't been there. It's I don't think it is. I mean, it's a pretty big beach. It's a pretty long beach.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have the tourists back yet that they would have normally this time. People just aren't traveling. They're not staying in hotels as much as they used to. So I think it'd be fine. The water's cold. I mean, that's the problem with the spring. The weather's warm and the water's cold. In the fall, the temperature of the air is the same, but the water's a whole lot warmer.
Right.
So, you see people come in here, they run into the water and turn around and run right back out.
Like, wow.
Yeah. This is pretty.
I mean, my kids spend all their time burying each other in sand and stuff like that anyways.
Yeah, I think I'll do some research and see. My wife is a
they could probably do that in the dead of winter, and they'd be just as happy as they could be.
Right, they had to chip ice.
I don't want to clean up the parka, but they.
No, that sounds good. I got you.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Well, have a good day, and I will talk again soon.
Sounds good, bud. Take care.
All right, Bill.
Bye.